Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. I'm really excited about our guest Pramukh. Pramukh is a project manager in the fintech. Spent over 15 years in US leading tech projects and building a strong career. He also did his master's from California State University and has been working in California. Last year, Pramukh decided to move back to India. And today we have here Pramukh who will share with us his journey, what it's really like, and how he prepared himself, key lessons we can learn from his journey. If you ever wondered what it's like to move back, so today's conversation is for you. Let's deep dive and hear Pramukh's story. Pramukh, welcome to the studio. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Nitin. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I would love to share my experience. Maybe it'll help somebody. Maybe it'll also give some of the information for people who are trying to make the move back, similar to how you and I have been through this. Yeah, so I'm a project manager. I worked a whole lot in the consulting space while I was in the United States, but recently I have moved to a taxation arts firm.
Thanks for giving brief overview. I would also like to understand what made you to move to US. How did you come up with that decision?
So it all started when I was doing my engineering. A lot of my cousins had already moved to the US to study or somewhere abroad, right? Some of them gone to Australia, some to UK, some to the US. And I always wanted to, follow along in those footsteps, pursue some higher education outside of India, learn or, understand the landscape, face challenges, as you say, right? So yeah, it started when I was doing my engineering. As we wrapped up the engineering and went on to work for a few months while I was in India. But then I finally decided to, take my GRE and TOEFL and pursue my journey to the US. So it started in 2008. I landed here to do my master's program in California State University, Sacramento. 12, actually, wrapped up my master's program in 2011, working for a company there in Sacramento.
That's awesome, sir. How did that overall experience US shaped your career?
I started doing my master's in 2008. I think you were a little before us. You probably were trying to end your master's program at that time. And I was like right in the middle of the session, right? So I actually was in the right place at the right time. By the time I graduated, the recession had come to a close and people who were actually laid off and trying to look for new jobs had already been placed. So there was some wiggle room to get new people on board. So that was interesting because, there's a lot more opportunities out there and be able to, start my professional career there. It was a little easier.
Yeah, thanks. A little bit about our background, Pramukh and myself. Pramukh was my junior, so that's how we know each other from our college days. Pramukh moved before me to India, probably 6 months before me, and I called him to get some suggestion, and he gave me a great suggestion. And it's an interesting journey because a lot of folks ask me how is the journey. So that's where I think this podcast would be helpful to showcase our experience. Let's explore Pramukh's journey today. Pramukh, tell me, when did you decide to move back to India? Was it always in your mind to come back, or something triggered along the way?
Yeah, so we always wanted to come back. My wife and I really got married. We decided that, at some point we're going to return back to India. We had given ourselves some time, so we decided that, 3 or 4 years into our marriage, we would come back. That got pushed out. Then we had a baby. And then we said, okay, once the baby's 2 years old or 3 years old, we move. COVID suddenly struck and everything fell, which means, we had to push it a little further. Time kept passing along. My daughter was about 4.5 to 5. And then we decided that, this is high time. Once they start developing their own social circles, that it becomes very difficult for them to adapt in a new country, a new people, new culture and all that, right? So we actually then had to make it a serious plan and make all the moves to actually be able to move over to India.
Yeah, thanks. At least you have one bit set, right? Or made up my mind. That greatly helps. But a lot of audience who are not sure they want to move back or stay back, that's when the decision becomes more confusing. Having a first bit flip or having a decision in mind that we want to come back, that's where all the journey starts. Let's explore, give audience some of the facts so that it makes their journey easier to either they want to move back or settle down in the US? How was your life in US?
Yeah, life in California was pretty good. It began with, when you were in school, you were sharing apartments with friends and things like that. But then you also then moved, once I started working, got another apartment with another friend, but it was not as many people sharing the apartment. It was just me and a buddy of mine. Moved around a little bit here and there. I worked in San Francisco for a year, where I lived in Fremont and then commuted back and forth by BART to San Francisco and back. But then, we wanted to get a house of our own. We were thinking of having a baby and all that. So we kind of figured that, getting a house would be a good idea. San Francisco prices were pretty high. Fremont prices are insane. So we decided to move back to Sacramento and then came back to Sacramento. We purchased our own house. We lived there for about 5 or 6 years before we had to actually go ahead with a bigger move of, moving back to India. So, that those kind of things happened. But life is pretty simple. Your job was almost an 8 to 5 job. Commute was about 15 minutes from the house. So, it wasn't that rough. You get back home, get back to family, then, spend the rest of the evening with family. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Thanks, Pramukh. If you reflect your time in US, could you share like a couple of memorable experiences over the years?
There's been a lot of memorable moments, right? We got married in India and then went back to the US as a married couple. We had a lot of other moments, where we would travel. Getting to a place 200 miles away is just about 3.5 to 4 hour drive. We'd love to drive. We'd love to travel. We covered most places in California. Before I actually moved back to India, we didn't visit India for about 6 years. Our main motive was, we are going back anyway. Why not just bank our holidays and use that to, travel and see what else US has to offer. We went to Yellowstone National Park. We rented an RV and stayed in that RV for 4 days, cooked our own meals in the RV. It was fun, driving around, watching all these buffaloes and looking out for wolves and bears. I've had moments of hiking up Mount Shasta, and we were sitting down for pictures on the middle of the road, and we hear some rumbling on the side, and we turn around. There's a bear cub just standing there like this and looking at us, and we freaked out. Right, we don't know what that bear's gonna do, and we don't know where the mom's at. So we yelled and we start running, and luckily for us, the bear just went away. But that would have been an interesting story.
Awesome. Yeah, I know Sacramento is pretty close to a lot of hikes around, and also there are a lot of camping places. A couple of hours, probably Lake Tahoe, Yosemite, Mount Shasta. So it's a beautiful place and easy to get around as well. When you decided to come back, how did your family react to that? Was your immediate family aligned towards moving back? Whose decision was to move back? And how did you make that decision jointly to move?
Yeah, so the decision was primarily ours. Mostly from the push was mostly from my wife because she always wanted to come back. I was definitely on board with the plan, so they had to make that move forward, right? And getting your immediate family involved is definitely the right way to do it because they're going to be your first line of contact when you get back to India. So we discussed this with my parents, my brother and my siblings, and my wife also discussed the same thing with her parents and her siblings. Everybody was on board, right? Parents and relatives are definitely more excited that you're coming back because they'll get to spend more time with you. They've always missed you when you're not there. There was family gatherings, family functions that you are not around. Now those go away, right? Because you're there and you can go with them. They can spend some more time with you. So yeah, they definitely were very appreciative of our thoughts and of our decisions, and very excited that we were coming back. So yeah, that it was very smooth in that aspect of our move.
Or how did you make the decision to move back?
So I think I just touched on that a little bit. We wanted to make the move when my daughter was around a 5-year-old age, which would mean that 2023 around October is when we would have decided to make the move. So 6 months or 7 months before that, we just actually had to start really making headway into what all needs to happen before we can actually say yes, we can buy a ticket to fly back, right? So that was the kind of timeline they gave us. We kept it very realistic, set small goals, right? Firstly, what is it going to take to move back? So we already had bought a house. Now we need to figure out a good time to sell it. Market was up and down. You don't lose a lot of money. So a good time to sell your house and then figure out where you're going to live in India, and then schooling situation, because you're getting your kid out in the middle of school. What's going to happen for the rest of the year for her schooling and education? Those kind of small goals that we had to make, and decide based on what those goals are, and how we're going to progress towards the big goal of actually making the.
Awesome. Do you have any specific expectation from India before you moved back? Were you able to meet all the expectation what you had in your mind, or was there any surprises?
Yeah, so, and I also mentioned this before, I didn't come back to India for about 5 to 6 years, because we were actually anyway going to be there for long term. So I didn't have a whole lot of expectation. There were three primary things that mattered. One, where I would live, my living situation, and we decided that pretty early on that we're gonna live at my parents' place for a few months or whatever it takes, and then we'll see how it goes. And then the second, the situation that would likely be a concern for everybody, or most people, would be, what am I going to do in the professional setting? Right? Can I continue with my existing job in the US while I'm working in India? Or, do I have to go out and look for another job? Or, or do I start something of my own? That was the second aspect of it. What's my professional career going to look like when I go to India? And the third thing is, where are we going to put our kid for education? Yeah, those are the three things which actually were major at the point to consider for me. I kind of figured that I was always going to be an employee. I tried to work with my community technology group, see if they had any avenues where I could work in India while I still cater to their clients. But it was a long shot. They couldn't really accommodate me at that point. I started looking out for other opportunities. Start to a bunch of friends in India. Fortunately, a ex-colleague of mine from the technology group, who had moved to my current company, Crow, reached out and said, "Hey, we have a development unit in India, in Delhi. Would you like to, join us as a project manager, so we can bridge the gap between the US clients and the offshore unit in Delhi?" So yeah, I was very fortunate that I was able to get that job, and they liked my performance, and you know were able to bring me on board. And so that's how I saw that kind of barrier. But what that helped me is, Mhm. you are going into, we are actually moving into India, right? There's a lot of unknowns. And to have a steady source of income right from day one, or, or however early you are in that move, is going to help you, figure out the other things that are moving. That helped me, give me a little bit of peace of mind, saying I'm going to make a big move. At the same time, there are some constants that I can control, and that helped me with a lot of peace of mind. My mental strength was a little bit better once I landed this job. Then other things fell into place. They figured out, that whatever we are going to do for my daughter's education, we end up having to go there and see. India has changed a lot, because we were going to always move back to Bangalore. Bangalore has changed a lot. Back in when we were studying, there were only a few handful of known schools, right? And we didn't know what to expect, even from those schools that we know. They might have changed their curriculum, their structure, their education, their level of education might have changed. So we didn't know what to expect. So we wanted, put our feet on the ground, and then we decide what we need to do. She's just 5 years old. She would get into Montessori or something to begin with, and then we could figure out what the next plan was once she had to get into first grade or second grade.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Pramukh. I think one key takeaway when you are moving back to India, there are a lot of unknowns you have to expect. And having a job that takes away one unknown constant, that makes move much easier rather than quitting your job. How is the adjustment? I just want to hear thoughts around lifestyle adjustment, traffic, especially daily conveniences.
It's definitely a curve. There's a huge change in how it works in the US and how it works here. It's very streamlined in the US. Most of it is, you can get done online, and if you do have to go into go actually be physically available with the DMV, something of that sort. It's still, much more structured, but here it's a little more haphazard. Those are things that you have to deal with. I think that comes with the territory. It comes with the move, that you have some uncertainties. But for the most part, as you said, 1.5 years in, we kind of, call ourselves locals now. And we are at that stage because, it, it took us about a year and a half to actually, you know, come to terms with, this a lot of changes, expected the unexpected, and be able to, lead our lives like, this novel, not get too messed up in the head about it. So yeah, it took us a little bit of time, but 1.5 years in, I think we are doing okay. We are becoming more adapted to all the unknowns and all the surprises that come our way, and we be able to deal with it in a more level-headed fashion. I think we have got to that point with this.
A lot of people ask, do you have any regrets moving back? So that actually turns out to be a very negative question. Do you get similar kind of questions? Wanted to understand your thought process around that.
Yeah, I think even before you actually make the move, you kind of have to expect that these are the questions that you'll get. It's going to be, why did you make the move? And that's one of the major questions. How are you doing after the move? And then do you have any regrets? Like all three, even though they seem, the first two seem as a positive and the last one seems negative, you can flip it around. They all have some kind of negative connotation, right? Um, but you have to kind of expect it and not let those bother you and bring you down. You definitely have thought it out, made a conscious decision to move back. You have to, the way I approach it is, as a family, we made up our mind to actually move back for the better of the family, for the most part, right? So not get brought down or, take that as a negative comment, explain to them, hey, we're doing okay. We're doing the best we can. And we made the move for certain reasons. And those reasons are playing out pretty well. And then it's always going to be, we know that the grass was different on the other side. Now we've come here. Now we're trying to figure out how green this grass is and how good this grass is. But it'll take us some time for sure. The basic motives of moving back being, catered to and going along in the right direction. I don't think those should bring us down. But definitely, those are the questions that you're gonna face, and something that you have to brace yourself for.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. So you should have that expectation and just take it in a positive. I know there's a lot of disruption when you move back, especially from the professional line. You already set up your professional identity in the US, working for almost a decade and a half. And when you move back to India, you are starting all over again. Not from the professional sense, from the geographical location, things are starting all over again. So did you had any challenges to re-establish? But for you, I think it would be easier because you're working for the same company, same team. But for the person who already who want to change job, want to come back to India, set up his professional identity all over again. What's your thought process around that? How would they overcome with those challenges?
I don't think I would be able to give an straight answer, but I'm just going to be speculating at this point, right? Because that's the way I kind of, set myself up. I did not want to be faced having to do this same thing all over again. We've built our own careers in the US for about 15 years. We've worked for about 12, 15 years in the US. We've kind of gotten to a point where, we have gained enough experience and expertise that, we are respected across the community, across, across the company too, right? Now, when you go on to a new company, then you have to prove yourself all over again. We're kind of, aging as well. And we're at an age where, those other things that are not the first thing, mind you want to have some kind of peace of mind at work. Hopefully things are in cruise control. So those kind of things definitely play on the mind. I wanted to eliminate that aspect altogether. Started to look for job opportunities which are more conducive to what I do, even before I actually had to make the move. That helped me a lot because, knowing who you work for and knowing and having some known people really does help in making this transition smooth. I don't know how it would be like for somebody in their 40s to just jump ship and come to India and then figure out the whole, technology landscape or, the corporate landscape over here all over again. I don't think I can give a true perspective of that. But in my case, I tried to eliminate that altogether by figuring out figuring out my job situation before I even moved back.
I'll give you a different perspective because I quit my job and start all over again, start from zero. For me, I started my own venture. Come with an open expectation. Don't come with a closed mind saying that, okay, I'll try for 6 months. If things doesn't work out, or 6 months to 1 year, I'll go back. If you think that way, uh, you are not fully onboarded to India. Even before you are committing something, you already failed, right? The chances of success is very less because that's what I've seen. All of my friends move back to the same reason. I'm give my best. I don't have a time commitment, and then go all in and see what happens. I think you have a better experience. Main things I think you need to plan. One is career, other one is finance before moving. So how did you plan your finance before moving back to India? Or do we need to plan our finances before moving back to India? So walk us those steps if you are, had some plans around finance.
Yeah, I think um, you're right. There are a couple of things that we have to definitely consider. Career is one of them, and the financial aspect, how we're going to fund our day to day. Right? Yeah, I don't know. It can be different for everybody depending on where they live in India geographically and what kind of lifestyle they want to live. Those kind of things will play a huge factor. What kind of financial stability they need to have. We kind of planned it across 4 or 5 years to figure out how much you need to have saved, so you have enough in savings to maybe to buy a house or to buy a car or whatever you need to uh, to run your day to day. Have enough saved away to have the peace of mind.
At least having some kind of financial stability to when you're experimenting things, that gives some kind of a confidence. And some people would sell their house and come back. So, what's your thought process on that? Like, why did you sell your house and move to India? Rather, why did you not rent the house? What's your thought process of renting a house versus selling altogether?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's a twofold answer, right? The timing when we actually made the move, the market was really hot, so it only made sense to sell it and make the money when you can. We actually ended up selling it a little earlier than our move and rented for a few months and then actually took the flight out. But it just made sense at that point. The second reason, the actual second layer to that is we hadn't thought about leaving it on rent. Maybe it's going to even out on the mortgage payments, maybe it's not, but that's a different story. I think we want to be committed to our move. We didn't want to leave any roots left there. We wanted to stay committed. We didn't want to have that, baggage of, we still have a house there. We can always go back. So that kind of, we didn't want to have that in the back of our mind because all that's going to do is, give us that false sense of hope that if it doesn't work out here, we can go back. But also, even though it's a false sense of hope, it's just cementing the fact that you're not ready to move. And you also, you nailed it. You actually spoke about it a little earlier that, giving ourselves that backout plan. I'll test this out for 6 months. I'll test this out for a year. We didn't go to the US to just do one semester, right? We went there to finish our masters, and we did, and we weathered everything out our masters, and even ended up working there. So going into something which is such a huge venture, with a mindset that you got to try it out for a few months or try it out for a few years, and then have a backup plan available. It's only going to mean that you're not completely committed. You're not in it for the long run. Is my perspective and my wife's perspective on it. We kind of wanted to keep that, we kind of wanted to keep that away from our minds, as much as possible, as much as we could. So, that's the reason why we actually did not leave our house for out at rent. We kind of outright sold it, and it played out pretty well for us, especially with COVID jacking up the prices in Sacramento because half of the area was trying to move, and yet houses in Sacramento, they drove the price for us. So,
I think that's a key factor I was talking about, right? Moving half-minded will never work. When you're doing something, all it things doesn't work, that's fine. That's not the end of the world, right? It's been a year and a half. Do you have any regrets of moving back?
I wouldn't say regret. We always go back and, go back to memories that we had in the US and, look back upon what we had. Sometimes, you feel like we had it better over there, and it's not as good. just yet over here. But it's just that, it's not there, right? So we have to give it more time. I think is where we land at this point. Things are going smooth, right? I'm doing well in my career. My wife is doing well. My daughter is doing well, and she's enjoying herself here with relatives and grandparents and everybody. So things are going well. We don't really have a whole lot of regrets. Initially, we kind of had the feeling that we left a whole lot over there because we always feel like the grass is greener on the other side. We always hear that saying, right? The grass is greener on the other side, but we have seen the grass on the other side. Now you look back and say, okay, the grass was actually green there. What are we doing here? But you got to give it the time. We didn't go to we. I think both our experiences, but we still know, we went to the US right out of college, going into our master's programs. We would eat cup noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We would not have breakfast a few days. We would just, solve our way through a day and, wrap up a day and then be ready for the next one. So we've gone through these hardships when we were going there. It's just that the switch is pretty much flipped over there. You're going to have some hardships. There's going to be changes that you have to adapt to. Things have changed over here since you've not been here for 15 years that you don't know. So you have to get adapted to that. So those kind of things, you have to give it the time. And only when you give it time, you're reaping the fruits of your move. So I think that's where we are at this point, that 1.5 years down this journey, we kind of seeing that, is working out. So we actually made the move for the better. So yeah, it's kind of good. And to answer your question, at this point, we kind of don't have any regrets.
We have to give enough time to get adjusted to a new India. People come here for a vacation and everybody talks in a nice word. We are a guest and we live here, we stay here for 3 weeks vacation. I think that's what most US companies give you, the 3 weeks of vacation. First week we are in a jet lag. Second week is like a nice phase. We go on a trips, family trips, some resort. Third week we are packing the bag. The only window we see India is a middle 1 week where everything is so nice, so romantic, and we think
Super picture.
we think that's India, right? People, and that's the green grass we see. And when we try to come back for a longer time, that's only a patch of a green grass. Everywhere it's dried up, right? That's what I think media also portrays a wrong information about India. Media has an extreme information. Like when one media says India will be like a $5 trillion, $6 trillion economy. This is the right time to move back to India. If you move back to India, you will be one of the richest person. Other side media, India is so bad, roads are bad, rapes everywhere. You cannot sustain in India. That's another extreme. Rather than seeing through other lenses, you have to experience a bit longer to see a diversified India. Because there's a pros and cons in India. Because India, as I said, it's not an autopilot mode. You still need to maneuver every stage of your life in India. Do you have any myth which you want to bust before you coming? That's one expectation. Now you think that's
I think there's a few. I'll just touch on one, right? It's a completely different culture thing. It's gonna overwhelm you at some point. People are gonna say, "Hey, you've lived in India for what? Well, 20 years before you left. You can come back and just be an Indian again." It's not that simple, right? For the 20 years, you were just a child for 18, and you only were an adult for 3 years. You spent the rest of your adult life, for about 20 years of your adult life outside of India, making your own decisions, making your own hay, right? While the sun shines. So, but when you come back here, it's not the same. There's huge culture shift. Maybe starting with your own, true son, right? They have lived without you for 15 years or 20 years. They have started building their own life, and they have their own day-to-day things going on. You're trying to inject yourself in there, and you're trying to force yourself in there for the most fun, which may work out, may not work out. But in my experience, it's difficult for them to adjust and for you to adjust. People are going to say, "Hey, come back and party. We're going to meet every weekend. We'll spend more time together." But they all have their own lives. They all have their own things going on. They all have either either they are busy at work, which doesn't allow you to spend the same time together. But it more often than not, you probably have seen them more on FaceTime and Google Chat when you were in the US than when you actually have landed here in India. And the only thing is you're calling from a local number than a international number, right? So yeah, that's kind of what we face. You can't anticipate that, you're going to spend a whole lot of time with everybody you feel like you should, right? But that's not a bad thing. It's definitely not a bad thing. Having them very close by is critical. Parents might be aging, in-laws may be aging, and being close by is definitely good. You may not see them every day, but when you need to be there, it's a quick journey back rather than having to wait a few hours, wait a few days, right? Sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of a myth that we have that I would like to bust. That if you're planning to come back to India and say, hey, I'm going to meet all my college friends every month, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I've been here for a year and a half, and we only met twice. So it's difficult. Everyone has their own thing going on, so it's not hard to blame them. But at the same time, it's something that you have to keep in mind that it's not it's not.
Yeah, that's great. So that's about the myth. But what's the one thing you miss coming back?
I think they get that a lot. Both my wife and I have the same thing that we miss. That they miss traveling um in the US because you know you would you could you didn't have to plan, my friend. You could just got in your car, packed a small suitcase, and just left, right? If you had a car, you didn't even have to have a car. If you had enough money, you could travel the whole entire United States. That's how we actually kind of looked at it. You don't need to have, even if you didn't have a car, you could take a bus or take a train or fly. If you had to stay, there's hotels and motels available almost everywhere. If you want to eat, there's restaurants almost every 20 miles, right? So that we miss traveling a whole lot. And yeah, we actually miss, being able to spend a whole lot of time together, at least in my case, I had a job where I would be back home by around 5:30, and the rest of the evening was mine to spend with family. That kind of luxury you kind of have lost because I kind of worked through the night, at least till about 11 o'clock. And by that time, my wife is back by 7. She takes care of the kid and puts her to sleep and goes to sleep with my daughter, right? And I don't get to spend time with either of them. So that kind of thing is something that we're kind of missing at this point.
I completely agree with you on that, Pramukh. Basically, this was my expectation before moving back to US. India has what, 27 state? I think they have added more state. I don't close to 30, including all the union territories. My idea was even if I visit one state a month, it takes me 3 years to cover entire India. That was my expectation. I wanted to travel every month to one state in India. I will never get bored for next 3 years. That's what I told my wife. So far, I am from Bangalore. I never moved out of Karnataka. Only trip I had was Hampi, which is also in a driving distance, 6 hours. That too was kind of an accident because I wanted to go there and never had a trip. So I think there's a lot of expectation versus reality. And US is much easier to take a trip. What is India's current job landscape and opportunities? Do you have any experience? Did you explore other job before coming here? What's your thought process on that? If somebody wants to move back, want to get a job in India, are there enough opportunities? How is the landscape?
I think there's enough opportunities in India. India is growing very rapidly, especially in Bangalore. Bangalore is pretty much like the startup capital. I don't know, other cities have overtook it or what, but definitely a lot of startups popping up here and there every now and then. Everybody who I talk to wants to do something on their own. A lot of people want to be independent, having their own thing. And most of them are very successful at it. So there's a lot of job opportunities available in Bangalore and in India in general, I would say. When I was looking, I did look around. I did get a couple of offers, and it seems like corporate structure is very close to what it is in the US, with a few differences, of course. But there's definitely a lot of opportunity here. It's always a good time to move to India. When we were in the US, there was a whole lot of baggage which we had. and we were tied to visa situations and all that. But here you have flexibility, you have the freedom to go out and explore new things and do things on your own. So you can definitely take advantage of that and, be successful for sure when you move back here.
What's the one thing which reaffirms and keeps you motivated?
No, there's more than one. The primary reason why we actually made the move was to have my daughter spend more time with her grandparent, her cousins, and close relatives, which is working out really well. She finishes school. Sometimes her grandparents pick her up, and they keep her for the evening, and then they send her back. We visit them almost every day, much as possible. We celebrate all the functions, Deepavali and Dasara and everything. We celebrate it all together. So she's learning more about our culture, and she's growing as as it should be, right? We wanted her to grow up with our culture and our values, and that's happening really well. And she's very comfortable with it. She's enjoying the cousin. We have a new addition to our family. She's about a year old now, but my daughter grew up, has seen her grow up, and she loves playing with her cousin, right? So yeah, that's definitely when we see her, enjoying so mingling with grandparents and learning our culture and learning how and seeing her grow up the way we grew up, I think that gives us a lot of validation that this is what we came here to do, and it's actually showing that we are doing it the right way. Second thing is, my wife is definitely more happier. We had certain times in the US where, she couldn't work because of my visa situation. Now she has a job, she's doing what she loves, what her passion is, she's following it. That helps. That also, assures that we have made the move to the right, and things are going okay. The third thing is everything around us is falling into place, and there's nothing to be sorry about it at this point. Everything is looking forward and looking up and up for us. So yeah, I would like to end it there and say they're doing a good job.
You have experienced two diverse culture, but what's the takeaway you want to give it to people who are on the fence?
Everybody who's gone to the US, in the back of their mind, they have it that, you want to come back to India, right? Nobody goes there and says, I'm going to go there to settle. They do probably, but most of them will have it in their back of mind that, I want to come back to India. And it's very scary. The thought itself, having lived away for 15 or 20 years, how many years have been there? Thought of it coming back to India is a little scary. There is a lot of factors to it, culture change, the economy change, all that. But it's not as bad as it seems. But it's a decision that's something that has to be made by you, and if you have a family, it has to be a mutual decision, and not a monotonous one, but definitely something that is doable, as far as I can say, because I've seen a bunch of people do it, and I can give my own experience in this as well. But it's definitely a doable task.
How do you go about convincing your wife? What's your take if you want to convince somebody?
Yeah, I was on the other side, right? You had to convince your wife, and my wife had to convince me. So I was on the other side. I was not actually fully on the other side. And we had a thought that we are going to come back. We didn't know how long, or we didn't know when. We had given us certain windows to make that move, and those windows kept moving out. But I think it's very important that both you, you and your partner are completely on board with it. You don't want to make that move and then in the back of your mind, like, okay, because of you, somebody else is suffering, or if it's not going right, because of you, somebody else is suffering, or if it is going right, then yeah, you're doing great. But it only happens when it only comes back to you when something goes wrong, right? Even the smallest things, if you start getting blamed that, oh, we could have been there and this would never have happened, and it's all because of you. So we kind of want to avoid that, because that just puts mental stress, negative, and makes it twice as much harder to, justify the move. So, I kind of get on board, find out what the pros and cons are, weigh it out. What's it like being in the US? So there's a lot of plus points to being in the US, but there's also a lot of points to being in India. The other thing that keeps popping up every time I talk to, people who I know in the US before I came here also is like, hey, how are you going to make this move? We've been trying to do this for a long time. I think now we have passed the stage where we can ever move because our kid is in sixth grade, seventh grade, and there's no way you can have a kid move because they have their own social circle, they have their own education path, all that. So that's another factor to take into account. If you leave it too late, it might be too late to actually make a move. So those kind of things play into the decision of actually moving back. Having everybody on board is definitely going to be a good recipe for success in this situation. And making the decision at the right time. If you leave it out for too long, you probably have to wait out a lot more, maybe, or maybe never happen. But yeah, the decision at the right time.
Coming to the timing factor, I have a follow-up question. What's the right time to move back?
And it varies from person to person. Some people would just go to do their masters and have a motive to come back and start something here, or already have something that they are working on to, and then just go in there to do their masters to boost their credibility at that point. But in our case, and I've seen people who have waited till they retire. I just played golf with one guy a couple of months ago, and he said I moved back from the US. And I asked him how long ago. It's like a year ago, and he's in his late 60s. He said he waited for retirement before he would come here because he didn't have to have any commitments. And then both his kids were in college, and or one of his kids was already married, and the other one was college. So he didn't have the responsibility on that side too. So he can now finally make the move. So him and his wife both have moved back, but his situation is completely different. He's coming back to just relax, chill, and play golf, right? But our situation is completely, it's a little different. We were in the prime of our careers, 15 plus years. We are at a pretty high level in our careers at this point, and having rather young families. So I think that's a good position to be in. One, because you're at a level of experience where you can come back and you can either find a job, which pretty easily, based on your experience, or you can find a way to do something on your own and make a difference on your own in the career space. And then the second thing is, you already, since your family is pretty young, it's easily more adaptable to change. Especially from the children's standpoint, they can adapt to things very well. I remember, my daughter had an accent when she was just 4 years old. She went to a farm school there in the US for her pre-nursery and nursery. So yeah, she had an accent, and she would come here and her teachers would be like, "What do you say?" And she still says Z instead of Z. And teachers still correct her. Uh, the more they go into that, they start, if you're moving them when they're in their seventh grade or eighth grade and they have a thick accent, they come to an Indian a school in India, and they get teased, placing them mental health, and teasing and bullying is not, it's not something that you expect your kid to go through. And one less thing you have to worry about if you bring them in sooner, because now my daughter does not have an accent. She's from here. She has the local tongue nailed down, probably speaks some better Kannada than most other Kannadigas over there. I think that's where I think I'm gonna lean my perspective here, is that when you're at a point where you can adapt easily, is when you have to probably make the move, and it's gonna be for the better.
Adaptability is a major factor for the kids. When they are at a younger stage, they tend to learn very easily, but if they come at a later stage, it becomes mentally challenging for them to get used to a new culture. I think that's one of the key things people who want to return back to India, they have to consider if they have kids. The other aspect is, you said we are at the mid stage of a career where we can launch ourselves either in India or in US. It depends on the person how they want to take it. Thanks, Pramukh, for joining, giving us an insight. Hopefully, this helps our audience clear their thought process. It was an interesting conversation. I wish you all the very best for you, Pramukh, on your move. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nitin. Thanks for having me. It was really wonderful sharing my experience here. Hopefully, this helps somebody who's trying to actually make the move back, or thinking about make the move back. It's a lot of uncertainty, and having some case studies like ours is going to be helpful. Even when we were trying to make the move, we probably reached out to people in our families or other people who we knew. I reached out to a bunch of my friends and my uncles, but they moved back 20 years ago. So their experience is not completely relevant in this day and age. So having that relevance aspect in the current day is also useful. I think hopefully my experiences resonated to some of you folks listening. And if there's anything you need answered, questions answered, you can post on my LinkedIn page and social, so we can contact or connect, and we can carry on the chat further there. But yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Nitin, for giving us this platform.
Thanks, Pramukh. Thanks. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a wonderful day.